This isn't really a ghost story, but I hope you'll find it interesting. You might not be scary to some, but I find this tale particularly chilling. For a while I was kind of a hikomiyaki person. You know, a bit of a shut-in. Well, this social withdrawal period of my life was getting to my family, especially my uncle. He offered me a job. He was from my father's side of the family and from the countryside. I guess when he was younger he had a different lifestyle to mine. Maybe he was used to being outside all the time. His work background was in construction, and so was the job he was offering me. He also said that he would be able to give me a place to stay since I didn't have much money. I took him up on his offer. The work was hard, but, to be honest with you, it was pretty fun. Looking back on that experience, I'm glad I accepted the job. He said to me, "One day got a job for you. We're going to go fill in a well. Think you're up for that?" The well in question hadn't been used for a number of years and the wooden cover was barely secure. Apparently, when one of the local kids went briefly missing, a search team checked out the well, and although there is no way into the well itself, it was deemed far too dangerous to be left as it is. We were sent to bury it. Essentially, me and the construction guys split up into different groups. We did a survey of what we were supposed to do and we concluded that we should fill in the well with sand and dirt. I learned that day that preliminary searches aren't that important for jobs like this, but they help run out the clock. I was tasked with breaking the cover of the well. Once I had done so, I peered over the rim of the well and I saw nothing but bones down there. The bones were completely white. I guess that was because they had been in the water for so long. I remember thinking how they looked nothing like the excavated brownish bones you see in documentaries or in paleontology. I lost it when I saw the hollow eye sockets of several skulls down there. From then on, my memory becomes a bit of a blur. People were clamoring and rushing back and forth. My uncle paced around on the phone to the authorities. We all sat there speculating. After he got off the phone, work was stopped indefinitely. This is where things get a bit odd. Before the police arrived, the mayor and some of the higher-ups in the small mountain town turned up and they began to speak in hushed circles with one another. Someone in a suit wandered over and told us that our services wouldn't be needed for the rest of the day. I guess that we'd be working someplace else tomorrow and things would get dealt with by the authorities. Then we would go back and fill in the well after the investigation was concluded. That wasn't the case. This happened when I was in the first or second year of junior high school. I think I was about 13 years old. I grew up in the countryside. We were called back the next day and told that the investigation was over, and we were told to fill in the well that day. It seemed as if the police didn't even show. They didn't even come to inspect the well. I found this so weird since my uncle was on the phone to them. I know he called them. The mayor was back with several old men from the council and various other associations in town. They stood by and watched us work. I expected to see all those skulls again in the well, but when I lifted the cover to prepare to drain the thing, there was nothing but darkness. Looking back at me when one of the old men who was standing watching over our work noticed my puzzled look. He shrugged as if to say, "Maybe you imagined it." What I can't wrap my head around is the fact that if someone went missing in a town of our size, then it would cause uproar. Right like that kid at the start of this. When he went missing once again, he was found. Don't worry. What I'm saying is those skeletons. They might have belonged to missing people from far away, and that well might have been some awful kind of dumping ground. Someone knew the well was disused and they knew it was a good place to hide secrets. Lots of secrets. I think that the mayor and the elder councilmen know something about it too. I have too many questions and so few answers. The incident was never mentioned in the news or anything. We never even saw the police or had to make reports. It's very strange. When I was in elementary school, all the local kids in the area would play down by the riverside. Down by the river there was a baseball field. Everyone went there to play after school. I would always walk home, drop off my school bag, then run right down there. Sometimes there would be kids from other schools there. One day I met this kid. He just turned up one day and started playing baseball with me. I liked his confidence. There were no plans or chat or anything. He just joined in. I liked it because I always came down to the baseball field alone thinking back on it. I had better communication and social skills back then than I do now. I never made any plans with anyone to meet up. I would just socialize with whoever was around. So one day I headed down there after school, and on that day there were kids. I didn't know that. I went over to one kid who was from another school. We didn't introduce us to one another. We just started playing football, and then we went to make it down in the river. My new friend asked me to follow him into the woods. Well, it wasn't really the woods. It sure felt like that at that age, though it was just a small cluster of thickets opposite the baseball field. It felt like a jungle in there. They had so many maze-like twists and turns. I didn't much like playing in there, though it was easy to get small cuts and grazes, which always hurt later when I had to take a bath. But my new friend ran straight in there, and I didn't want to be left behind. So I followed. Before long we arrived at a clearing. I never had been to that place before that day. There was an abandoned car, an abandoned old, dilapidated house, and just off to the left of the house was a very old-looking well. The well was concrete and the opening looked to be about 1 meter wide. We went over to it right away and peered in nothing but darkness. Looked back at us. We had no flashlights, so we couldn't see the bottom. I bet there's water down there, I said. The boy bent down and grabbed a pebble and dropped it down the mouth of the well. The pebble clattered against the sides of the well before we heard it land. We were expecting the splash of water, but there wasn't one. Let's go in, he said. Isn't that dangerous? I asked. I didn't want to go down. There was a chance you could get really hurt, I protested, but the boy went in. Regardless of what I said, he was planting his feet and his hands against either side of the well's walls and edging himself downwards. Little by little he had gotten about halfway. Then, within the blink of an eye, he slipped into the darkness. I heard him fall and land down there, and I heard him groan. I called down to him asking if he was okay and fine. Come down here and join me. I was really glad he was okay. No thanks. Just tell me what it's like. There was no way I was going down there. I was really scared that once I was down there, I wouldn't be able to get back out. Then I suddenly heard his screams rise up from the bottom of the well. Once again I called over the rim and asked if he was okay. I called several times, but he never responded. I knew that something was wrong. I began to panic. I paced around asking myself, what should I do? What should I do again and again? Waiting to hear him call back. I just didn't have the courage to go down the well like he did. So I just shouted into the well. I will go find an adult. I'll be right back. I hated myself for leaving him, but I had little other choice. I ran as fast as I could back through the woods to try and find someone. The twigs and branches cut me as I ran, but I didn't care. Luckily, as soon as I got back to the baseball field area, I spotted an old man walking his dog. I explained everything to him, and within moments he had organized his sons to arrive with a ladder and notified the authorities. This is where things get very strange. There was no boy in the well. They couldn't find him. There was nothing to say that anyone had been down in that well for years. When I was asked for the boy's name, obviously I couldn't give them an answer. I heard the fireman suggesting that I made the whole thing up as a prank that cut me deeply. He was right there only moments ago. Where was he? A search was conducted in the area, with the police paying specific attention to the riverbank. But the search was terminated when night fell and there was no sign of the boy anywhere. No further searches were organized because the boy hadn't been reported missing, which gave me two chilling outcomes to consider. Either no one looked for him because no one missed him, or he was never real and was a figment of my imagination. Time crawled by, and the only thing related to him which remained was my own unease about what happened. I remember at that age I learned the word unresolved. I really don't like that word. It's very cold. A few years later, when I was in high school, I heard some kids talking about that wooded area near the baseball field. They said that it was reportedly haunted. Who knows what I saw? I did believe he could have been a ghost for a long time. I know in my heart he wasn't. Though as I grow older I grow more cynical. Was he part of some horrible bait trap to get me into that? Well, for some reason. And when I went to get help, was he helped out by some unseen accomplice? He led me to that abandoned house pretty quickly. I'm sorry to leave it here, but the only word I have to end this story is unresolved. This happened to me a number of years ago when I was in high school. I haven't told anyone about this, so maybe writing it will give me the confidence to share. Many years ago I lived in a small mountain town. There were many beautiful places there. There was a shrine at the top of the mountain. It was an Inari one. Halfway up the mountain was an old air raid shelter, a well and a graveyard. All the kids in town called that whole area scary. Kids at school always dared one another to go up there, especially at night, to test their courage. Eventually, my friends and I decided that we were going to go up there to see what all the fuss was about. One of my friends didn't believe in ghosts and wasn't one to get spooked easily. We arrived at the area with the well. It was surrounded by weeds, but we could see an old wooden cover resting on top of the well. There was a huge stone on top of the cover and it was held in place with some sort of wire. We all speculated as to why this was. Why did a well need to be so heavily covered? We should have been more concerned than we were. We went up to the top of the mountain to check out the old shrine, but it didn't really faze us too much, since we weren't as freaked out as we hoped to be. We decided that we'd all sneak out at midnight and meet back up and see what the mountain was like in the dark. When the time came, we ascended the mountain with flashlights in hand. We first went to check out the old air raid shelter and then the graveyard. We were getting mildly spooked out. Nothing major though. Just over talkative. The moon was big and bright that night, so we could see quite well. Next we approached the well, but for some reason I really wanted to see what was in there. I prepared for it too. I brought some pliers and a screwdriver from home to remove the cover. Lucky for us, the wire was rusted and it came off almost instantly. With everyone working together, we were able to move the heavy stone off of the well cover. We were working together and the sense of community was fun. Like a kind of heave. Whole level of cheering broke out amongst us boys when the heavy stone finally toppled. We all roared with excitement. That's a great memory for me. What comes next isn't so much. We all gathered around and shone our torches into the well. There was some old faded writing on the underside of the well cover. It looked religious. I didn't really understand it. The stench that came out from the cover being removed is disgusting. We all simultaneously took a step back. Some of my friends were freaked out and wanted to leave. I wanted to keep looking, and some of my other friends did too. I raced back to the mouth of the well. We peered into the well. Despite the brave faces we were putting on, I think we were all apprehensive. Inside the well was pitch black. We shot our torches, but we couldn't see to the bottom. We felt the cold air rise out from the pit of the well. There must have been water down there. Some friends began to shout into the well to see how much their voices echoed. One of them even spat down there. We all strained our ears to try and find out how deep it was. We expected the echo of water rippling to reverberate through the well, but what came back was something unexpected. The sound that came back was a scratching sound. No one said a word, but we could tell from one another's flashlight lit faces that we were all puzzled and creeped out. We all stayed silent to try to hear what sound would come next. The scratching continued and then doubled in sound. Someone asked what the sound was. No one had a reply. I took the cover off of the well. I illuminated it with my flashlight and saw countless scratch marks on the other side of the cover. A horrible thought came to me. The cover, the wire and the stone wasn't to keep everyone out, but perhaps to keep something in. I felt for sure that something was climbing up the walls of the well. That's what that noise was. I just ran for it without explaining myself. Everyone looked surprised and gave chase behind me. We found one another again at the bottom of the mountain and we headed to an all-night restaurant to talk about what had happened. Everyone looked pale. One of my friends didn't believe that some of us saw the scratch marks on the underside of the well cover. He said that he wanted to go back and check. No one wanted to go with him. This is where the story gets away from me a little bit. Because when my friend, who didn't believe in seeing the scratch marks, went home, he said he saw fresh scratch marks in his family home store. He also said he saw someone wearing a mask nearby. I don't know if he's trying to scare me, but there were scratch marks on his door. I saw them for myself. We went back to the shrine at the top of the mountain the next day and prayed for our safety. Nothing happened after that. I don't know if it's all one big coincidence, but it scared the hell out of me. Thankfully, we're all doing all right still. This happened when I was working in Kamakura on a renovation job. My whole family has been in the renovation trade for generations. Coming up to 1 year now. The home I was set to work on had been renovated and expanded so many times that the property were out of sync and the shape of the building was a bit odd. So first things first, I started making a new drawing, trying my best to base it on the others. I found that there was an unnatural dead space in the center of the house. When I showed the owner, it seemed as if they were unaware of this too. Usually in my line of work, there is a common vacant space beneath the stairs in a customer's home, but it was uncommon to see a space in the center of the house which wasn't being used for storage. The client, when I told him about this space, wanted to make use of it. I was going to expand one of the rooms to include it. We aren't talking about a huge amount of space. It was no bigger than a walk-in closet. While I was making repairs, I realized that the water pipe would need to be replaced. It was an old iron pipe and it was badly corroded. I needed to check the other pipes which ran under the floor to see how bad they were. There was something off the foundation under. There was all wrong and the pipes were leading to some centralized location. Perhaps there was a bath there before or something. But why would you have one in the center of the room? I asked myself. I had to get down there and take a look for myself. I found the spot under the floorboards where the space should be and I craned my neck to have a look. There was a portion of the foundation missing under the floorboards. It was a gap of about 1 millimeter. I thought that this was odd, but not uncommon, since the number of renovations that had been carried out in the home. I didn't pay it much mind. I just carried on with my survey. A couple of days passed and the contract and quote was agreed and we had a date and time in place to start the job. When the time came, demolition work was in place. We started with the walls and the floor. Before long we arrived at the point where we had to demolish the floor and the wall covering the dead space I mentioned earlier. I asked some of the guys to get started with the wall. They were blasting it with a hammer and the mortar was crumbling and the wood was splintering. When they destroyed enough of the wall to see inside, they looked in and stopped in shock. They all decided it was time for a break without the need for words to be exchanged. Everyone seemed dejected and downbeat when I saw them. I had been working on another area in the house. I was kind of annoyed, since we didn't agree to have a break at this time. So I went over and looked through the hole in the wall that they had created and I saw something that I couldn't believe. My flashlight fell on one of the walls inside. There was a demonic-looking mask hanging on the wall. We call it a henya. Here's a picture of one. You may have seen it before. There was a box lying on the floor. It was covered in dust. It must have been sat there for an innumerable amount of years. I started to become skeptical of the owner. Did he know this? Was there? What the hell was it? It was really creepy. I went to go speak with my crew. The one who made the hole in the wall said that he didn't want to work for the rest of the day. He just wanted to go home. He didn't want to go anywhere near that room. He said it was giving off major bad vibes. I couldn't really lose a worker. I was the site manager and I knew that if I lost a worker then the price for the customer would increase and the estimated completion date would slip. I didn't have much choice. This happened when I was in the first or second year of junior high school. I think I was about 13 years old. I grew up in the countryside. I had to consult the owner of the property to gauge his reaction. Luckily he wasn't far from his home. He was staying with some relatives nearby. He seemed just as shocked as we were about the discovery of this creepy room. He claimed he never knew of its existence until I called him. He even called his grandfather to ask if he knew something. But he didn't. I got the owner to come and see what we had discovered. Since some of my crew didn't want to go anywhere near that room, I decided that I would take the matter into my own hands and demolish the wall myself. I got them to go work elsewhere. It didn't take me a great deal of time to smash my way into the room and the first thing I did was take that creepy box and that mask out of there. By the time I'd broken through into the room, the owner had arrived. I handed him that box and the mask and I watched as he wiped the dust off of them. The box was tightly sealed with some religious scribbles, talisman and heavy black lacquered paint. He seemed eager to check out what was inside the box, and that was fine with me too. I was pretty interested. He was trying to joke around, saying there must be treasure, but no one was laughing. This happened when I was in the first or second year of junior high school. I think I was about 13 years old. I grew up in the countryside. Since the room had been opened up, the atmosphere had become more oppressive. I could understand why some of the men wanted to stop working. When he opened the box, he found a completely white wooden male doll dressed in a historical style of clothing. It was clearly from a long time ago. Next to the doll was a bundle of hair tied together by some paper. We call it a Heine Ninja. Here's a picture of one looking at that hair. It was pretty obvious that it wasn't recently cut. Whoever's hair it was likely long dead, and to have a lock of hair immortalized next to such a pristine doll in a box tells me that this person probably didn't die from natural causes. I was taken aback by what I was seeing from that moment. I had some awful feelings of regret about taking this job on. I really didn't want to be there. I'm a man of my word. This happened when I was in the first or second year of junior high school. I think I was about 13 years old. I grew up in the countryside. And when I say I'll finish a job, I mean it. I just got my head down and went about my work as quickly as I could. I took down the rest of the wall and started to tear up the floor. I used the crowbar to bring up the floorboards. Now I could see the reason why this house had an empty room. Because beneath the floor was this was also why some of the foundation was missing. There was a gaping hole beneath the floorboards, and it led to the mouth of some ageless. Well, I could tell that the water was long gone. It was in bad shape. It was really falling apart. It wasn't as big as the one you see in the ring, but it was wide enough for a person to fit down there, and it wasn't very deep either. If I crouched in there, it would conceal me, but not much more. I didn't really want to look in there, but the owner of the house asked me to investigate. I kept refusing, for whatever excuse came to mind. I don't know if it's because it would have made an already difficult job longer, or if I was truly disturbed by what I might find there. I guess we had the same fears. We were scared of what was in the well. Would we find a skeleton? What trouble would that bring? Why was this little room immortalizing this doll and this mask over her? Well, there must be some reason I remodel homes. I would rather leave things like this to other professionals. He kept asking me to check it out. He said that the completion date of the renovations could be postponed, and he would pay more to have the well excavated on top of any additional expenses. I kept refusing until he said the words "2 million yen. That's over $17,000. I didn't know if I could accept this, and I told him that he said he would call the director of my company, and he jogged off with his phone in hand. Moments later he was back and he handed the phone to me. I spoke with the director, and the message I got from him was, "If you want to keep your job and get a bonus this year, dig." I hopped into that cold, forgotten well, and began to dig. I dug for about 30 centimeters and I couldn't find anything. There was basically nothing but a light layer of dry soil. Then I reached a bunch of large rocks. I really didn't want to go below those rocks. I felt for sure something was down there. If I disturbed some of those stones lying on top of the body, who knows what might have happened. I think if I saw something down there too, it would have caused me to lose my mind. I told the owner that the stones would simply be impossible to move. I managed to convince him of that. After that, construction and renovations reached their natural conclusions without any issues. And although it was a disturbing time for me, I ended up with a story to tell. I was in the area about a year later, and I used the opportunity to see how the place looked. After all that expense, the house was completely demolished. There was nothing but a nameplate and a fence standing on that plot of land. Perhaps that could be a sign to warn off potential buyers. I can't help but feel that we uncovered something that wanted to get out that day.